It's a different type of Freddie. He's more
Yeah,
patient.
I want to run that back, bro.
That was one of the best moments from our reaction to Freddie Gibbs' SSS, also known as Sold Soul Separately. He just dropped this album, and it's coming off the heels of his Grammy-nominated album, Alfredo. And at this point, you could pretty much expect an Album of the Year contender every time that Freddie drops, so the expectations were super high for this album. But let's get right into it with the artist performance.
Yes,
What
sir.
did you think of it, man?
Well, listen, this is crazy because going into this new rollout with Freddie, I didn't know what to expect because it was different. He had come off of 2 albums where he was locked into one producer with Madlib back in 2019, and then 2020 made a return with The Alchemist. 2 fantastic albums, Album of the Year contenders, and it's hard to carry up that hype within a new album.
Yeah.
I'm being honest with you. But listen, as you get into the album, you start to realize that Freddie Gibbs is literally one of the most consistent rappers that we have in 2022 at the moment, and you're gonna find all kinds of energetic flows, all kinds of passionate performances, and things that you see from Freddie Gibbs on a regular basis, but now in a more developed and personal way. So what did you get out of the performances, and what were your highlights?
Freddie's personality just shines, bro. He has so much charisma and great track presence, and even the way that he sometimes starts off a song with a sniffle, like that just perfectly plays into his rap persona, and it's kind of his version of a Lil Wayne lighter flick to some degree. Not only that, but I feel like Freddie utilizes every crevice within a beat to find the perfect pockets, and the way that he wiggles around, he is like the master key of hip-hop. He could literally fit anywhere and everywhere on a production, and I was totally blown away for his ability to do that here. Apart from that, I also like the fact that he took it upon himself to try out more hooks on this album, and a lot of them were great. The only one that I didn't like too much was the hook on Too Much.
Yeah, it wasn't too good. That one was a bit weaker in my opinion, just because it was too long, and you saw it in the writing where he literally just stacked up the 2 verses back to back, and I find like when you have 3 of those in a song, it just runs on.
It's literally too much.
Absolutely, it is too much to a certain extent. But let me talk about CIA, because I find when you find Freddie the best in any mode, it's always with Madlib. They're the perfect beats for him. And listen, when you're starting to get these super confident cadences from Freddie Gibbs with those smooth flows that you're talking about, it makes for an unmatched feeling going through Madlib production, and that's what I got on that song as well. And then if you want to go into Blackest in the Room, I mean, that's where he's tackling Uncle Al productions, where they're a lot more dynamic, and he needs to be able to find those pockets, and he's attacking different beat switches. In different verses, you'll have 5 to 6 flow switches that make you wonder, like, how did it happen? Because the seamless transitions are absolutely perfect.
Another performance that I really enjoyed was Lobster Omelet, and on that one, throughout the verse, he has this crazy double time flow, and if you pick up on this, you'll actually see that for every couplet on the end rhyme, he puts extra emphasis on that last word, and it really, just kind of makes him showcase certain words and certain punchlines, which is pretty fantastic. And I also like what he did on Dark Hearted, because he took a risk there. He was kind of sounding more fragile, had some background vocals implemented, more of a calm and subtle tone. So that was really enjoyable. And overall, I mean, Freddie is one of the best masters of flow. You'll get maybe 3 flow switches per song, and all throughout, as good as the features were, you could have seen him maybe carry out this track list on his own if he wanted to.
Absolutely.
So the performance was amazing.
It was amazing, and I also find he had great chemistry with everyone on the album that he included, but we're going to get more into that once we attack the features. But let's get into the content matter. This is a completely different album than what you got with Alfredo and Bandana, and for a solo studio album from Freddie Gibbs, I feel like he did exactly what he had to do. He updates you on where he's at in his current life. There's this crazy ongoing theme that's quite cinematic, where you're at the SSS hotel, you're in this crazy resort casino, and you start to see that there's this crazy dynamic switch within the track list, where you get to a song like Space Rabbit. All the songs before that were very triumphant, very energetic. It felt like you were on a high, and as you go down the track list, you start to feel a darker atmosphere in both production choices and in content matters. So even if you were looking at, let's say, that operator and the concierge at the SSS hotel, all of the skits at the end of the songs start to get darker as the actual track list progresses, and I find those little things within that really added to the content for me.
Absolutely. And let's go back to that whole hotel concept. I think that was genius, because he lets us know from the beginning that he rented out the whole top floor of the resort that he's at. And when you look at that first portion of the track list, like you were saying, he seems like he's confident in his ability to get away with his crimes. He's surrounded by beautiful women. He's kind of just taking in that lifestyle that, you know, he's kind of immersed himself into. But then as you go deeper, there's kind of this downward spiral and a realization that this life of crime is temporary, just like his stay at a hotel. That's something that I picked up on. Not only that, but the whole casino aspect as well. Him kind of having to take risks and gambles within his own life. Him having to put in so much time into his rap career and dedicate, his life to that. I think that he showed a lot of personal growth. Not only that, but when you look at a song like Grandma's Stove, that was probably the most soul-crushing songwriting I've ever heard from Freddie Gibbs. Him kind of recounting everything he had to go through to make it to the point where he's at. If that involves him dealing with his father's illness, if that's about issues he's had with his baby mothers. I mean, all of that just came into fruition towards the end of the track list, and it was perfectly executed and really one of the most underrated concept albums I feel like it's going to be, just because people won't maybe pick up on that whole hotel concept, which is phenomenal.
It was super well implemented. And listen, you come to a Freddie Gibbs album and you also want, the coke performances and, you're going to find
one-liners and all that.
And you're going to find full of those within it. But something I noticed about the track list is that it wasn't as heavy as other albums because there's a lot more room in the writing for personal writing.
Yeah.
And I find that it was really well contrasted. But even if you guys are trying to find those types of songs, you're going to get them in something like Gold Rings. You're going to get them in Zipper Bagz, where, he's, taking these coke concepts and still flipping them in a very signature Freddie way. So listen, I think the content was amazing. It keeps you entertained throughout. You're getting, a classic Freddie Gibbs, feel with all the coke content matter, but you're also getting a very personal album at that same time. But let's go into the features, all right? Because there was a lot of returns here. And the first two I want to tackle are Rick Ross and Pusha T, because in my opinion, I think both of those verses, and you guys let me know how you feel about this in the comments section, could stack up to Palmolive and Scotty Beam. I'm being honest with you.
I don't know if it's Palmolive level. I don't know if I'd go that far, bro, but it's great.
It's in that same conversation, though. I feel like you could put it in. I still think Palmolive is better. I still do think, though, Gold Rings could be in that conversation as far as quality goes.
Honestly, Pusha T really gave you, a highlight reel worthy verse. I love the flip that he has from Days of Our Lives to Days of Our Pies, which relates to a key of coke. That was fucking genius. And the chemistry is amazing. I love how Pusha T kind of validated Freddie Gibbs as a king of coke rap, saying like, I don't believe any of you guys talking this kind of talk except for Freddie. That's kind of how he ended up his verse, and that was really well done. Another feature that was a huge standout for me had to be Raekwon, bro.
Absolutely.
He chefed up a fucking gourmet meal on that album. It's something that I was talking about in the reaction that we did. That was one of my favorite moments from that reaction.
Do you think you can consider that top three, features of the year off the bat?
Absolutely, bro. I mean, just that grimy delivery that he brought. Also, just the multi-syllabic rhyming. I think that you could argue it's maybe the best verse on the whole album.
I like that. I do like that.
Raekwon really knew what he did there. Apart from that,
I want to jump in with Anderson .Paak. Okay, I wanted to have this conversation now. I almost feel like that song should have been Anderson's. I'm being honest with you. Like, I felt like Freddie was almost the feature on the song because of the runtime that Anderson had on there, but it was a super quirky and dynamic performance from Anderson, and I really enjoyed that. And I was telling you yesterday, when he starts off the song, it almost gives me, reminiscent vibes of something like Bublin, for example, where it's more aggressive Anderson. And I think that it was so well executed.
And you made a good point. The production kind of had like this Egyptian type of vibe to it.
Exactly.
It sounded like he was like singing to a pharaoh or something, which was pretty cool. And like you said, he got into his rapping bag like he did on Yanis off of Bandana. And both times he just came in and delivered. Apart from that, I want to talk about Moneybagg Yo, who actually had probably the best section off of Too Much. Absolutely slid on there, came in with some energy. Offset was a bit of a weak one, though, for me on Pain and Strife. The mixing on the vocals weren't great, and I also feel like I would have preferred to have seen Offset on more of a harder knocking type of aggressive song rather than the more melodic and slower Pain and Strife.
Yeah, and also I want to shout out Music Soul Child, on Grandma's Stove towards the end where you had that outro. The vocal performance was fantastic, and it was extremely heartfelt and actually added to the atmosphere of that song. So that was super well calculated. I also want to talk about Kelly Price on Couldn't Be Done. The way that, because I want to talk about that in the production standpoint as well, because it's a big standout for me. And I feel like the way that Kelly's vocals on the chorus match match like that triumphant, super crazy production that you're getting, like this kind of, I would say, you know, Chipmunk Soul sort of
You are getting
production.
that, yeah.
And the way that she matched that towards the end of the song as well was really well executed.
It's great because she was kind of reciting the same lyrics from that sample, but added a more grandiose type of spin on it, and the vocals were just beautiful. Apart from that, Rick Ross and Lobster Omelette, I mean, that
Pure
was
luxury.
fucking amazing, and yeah, it definitely holds up to Scotty Beam. And
Besides
yeah,
that, DJ
let me
Paul.
ask, DJ Paul was all right. Yeah,
Listen, I really like the verse. I find it was solid. I know that you're maybe a bit iffy about it, but you still find it a good verse.
I think it was
good.
quality. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think it's in the upper echelon of the rest of the features, but best and worst feature on it.
Best feature for me, I think I'm gonna be going Raekwon for sure. I would say the worst one, I would go, not the worst, but the one I dislike the most would probably be Offset's. How
Same
about
for
you?
me.
What are you going
Offset
with?
as the worst and Raekwon as the best. So, but yeah, overall, I think the features were amazing. They all played into the theme of the album as well, and brought in a lot of memorable verses and hooks. So yeah, definitely amazing there. But let's go on to the production, which was handled by a variety of producers, and I feel like that was maybe something that I was kind of fearful of going into this album. Is like, you know, you had Madlib and Alchemist produced these amazing soundscapes that were so focused for Freddie, but now that he's bringing all these new faces to the center hold, would it be the same? Would he still be able to carry out all these beats? And he did execute upon that.
Absolutely. Okay, so what do you want to start with, bro? This track list is absolutely stacked full of production highlights. Okay, let's start with Blackest in the Room. I think we could start there. You know, as you were talking about, you know, Alfredo was a masterpiece full of these crazy fucking sample flips that Freddie was able to glide on, and Blackest in the Room is nothing short of that. You're going to find this beautiful jazzy production that starts off the song, and then it transitions into more of a darker tempo at the end, and that's where you could find some quicker flows that, you know, Freddie was able to pick up on, and I find it added to the overall dynamic feeling of that song. So how did you like Blackest in the Room? Do you think you compare it to other Alchemist beats that he's had, and it's in the upper echelon?
Absolutely. I mean, it was refreshing to be, you know, one of the only beat switches that we got off of the album. I love both components of it. You had some nice saxophone in the beginning, some fucking hi-hats as well. Really well executed. Apart from that, Madlib on CIA. I mean, just fucking beautiful. Love the trumpets on that one and just the overall jazzy soundscape. Apart from that, Justice League had one of my favorite beats on the song Rabbit Vision.
Absolutely.
You had this electric guitar that was ringing through, kind of hops in and out of the beat. And that one's kind of more sunny and uplifting. And that's what I like too about this track list and soundscape, is that you kind of have your fair share of these more upbeat and I would say optimistic sounding productions.
Yeah.
And then you have your good share of the darker ones.
Well, that's what I want to talk about. A more mysterious production that I really like, that I feel like added to the cinematic value too, because there's kind of a switch in track list is on Space Rabbit. That's where you could start to see the track list gets a bit darker, and I believe that was actually done by Jahan Sweetboy Wanda and Roger Chayahead. So
yeah,
it was a fantastic production, because like that's where you kind of get like, you know, the sniffing from Freddie, and then also you hear like this alien dialing before it gets into the song, and it's a super mysterious production as Freddie comes through and rides on that. But
what's your favorite beat? Is that the one for you?
Listen, I honestly, like, I would say maybe CIA by Madlib. Also, Blackest in the Room is up there for me, but one that I think I have as a big standout is actually Zipper Bagz, and that's a K-Tronada production.
Fire.
Before I actually get into the production, I'm not sure if you picked up on this, but the sequencing from Pain and Strife into Zipper Bagz was super well done. You see how Pain and Strife comes in, and it's like, it's a very energetic and more of an uplifting production, bleeds into the intro of this, and then you get this crazy fucking vocal sample in the back.
Some banging
and
808s.
it's very triumphant. So take me through that, bro. That was one of my favorite.
Yeah,
off
I
the
just
album.
loved even the layered vocal samples. It feels like there was more than one implemented
That's
on
true.
that track. And I also love the fact that K-Tronada left some space for the instrumental to kind of go... to kind of, I would say, take a break for Freddie to go a cappella for a little bit. So it was cool to see that Freddie managed to dictate the tempo of that song. But my favorite production has to be the intro, bro. Couldn't be done. I love that 70s soul sample, the way that it was manipulated.
That the piano keys within
Bro,
the middle
it literally
over there.
sounded
Yeah, it
like
was
the
nuts.
opening credits of a 70s gangster movie. Like, it was the perfect opener to the album for me. And overall, I mean, I was just super satisfied with this, and I think that it really goes to show that Freddie Gibbs has the best beat selection out of any other artist in hip hop right now.
It's definitely one of the best produced albums of the year. So listen, I think it was amazing. You're gonna have so much fun with this soundscape, and as Lou said, very dynamic as well. But let's get into the replay value. I've been, bumping so many different Freddie projects over the years. You want to access his back catalog of mixtapes. You go into his personal studio albums. You go into, the rapper producer duo albums that he has with Alchemist and that he has with Madlib. And this is a really nice listen from a studio album standpoint. It gave me exactly what I wanted all throughout. Listen, I do have some songs that I might not revisit all that much.
So let's say, how many aren't you taking?
Pain and Strife. I think that it's a bit on the weaker side of the track list. And I would also say
too much
because the song itself is not bad. And it's not that I dislike it. It's just those hooks are too long for me. And I could see myself maybe skipping over that in the future. But besides that, you're getting some of the best writing all year from Freddie Gibbs, some of the best rapping performance as well. And as you said, the beat selection is top tier on this. So there's so many different reasons why I have to revisit this album. It's going to be in my rotation.
Yeah, this is going to be heavy in my rotation too. I think the replay value is amazing just because, like you said, besides, Too Much and Pain and Strife, which Pain and Strife is still pretty good.
It is pretty good,
minus the Offset part, which isn't horrible, just mixing wasn't right on it. Very enjoyable track list, a lot of memorable one-liners as well for me, and yeah, it just seems to be a new chapter for Freddie Gibbs, which is definitely exciting to kind of tap into. A lot of stories that he's sharing with you
absolutely.
that I kind of want to learn more about. So I think the replay value is definitely amazing. But let's get into our overall thoughts, bro. We had that thought. Is this going to be an album of the year contender? And I think it is. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I could see this making an end of the year list for me in both songs, in both albums, and maybe even features once we get there. So I think it's a super dynamic track list. Listen, it was worth the wait. Freddie took a year off from dropping. We thought it would maybe come out last year, but we'll see what happens. And what's interesting about this is that he now has room to drop Montana maybe at a certain point with Madlib.
I'm ready, bro.
That's what I'm waiting for. So if this is the album, is the album I'm getting before I get that classic, I already know it's going to sound fantastic just because of the quality of the last two. I'm super happy with this.
Absolutely.
And even at that, you want to talk about a guy that put a lot of passion into a track list and actually wanted an album experience. And he was talking about this in an interview where he feels like a lot of new albums are coming out have this filler and compilation feel to it, but he's like, sit down with this album and really enjoy it. I could feel that, and it's major respect. I think overall the album is amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, for my thoughts, I think that Freddie Gibbs delivered another stellar album, another album of the year contender. Has maybe 1 or 2 weak performances at the very most, and I think that he showed his versatility as an artist here, going for these more experimental melodic vocals at certain points, kind of sounding like he's squealing and kind of really going into that higher pitch. That was awesome. Also, just his ability to tackle different productions, from trap beats to more jazzy compositions. He can really play at any sound that he wants to. Not only that, but that whole concept, I think, of him being at this resort and contemplating his life decisions, realizing that a life in the streets is temporary because you're bound to get hurt or to maybe get locked up. That was really well executed. It felt like he was at this hideaway, reflecting on all the shit that he's done in his life and kind of being grateful for the place he reached. And I just think that he executed on every single front in this album. It's fucking amazing, bro.
Worth the wait, bud?
Absolutely, bro. One of my favorites of the entire year. But guys, let us know down in the comments, what did you think of this album? And what would you score it based on our scoring system that goes from bad, mid, good, great, amazing, and perfect? And guys, we have so many more reviews on the way. So subscribe if you have not already. Thank you guys for watching the whole review, and we'll catch you in the next one.